what is the message that you try to get across to the young men in the King movement? What's the primary message? And also, you having two young daughters, well, not real young, but they're adults, young adults. What's the message that you tell them, being young Black women in this, this world that we're in right now?
Yeah, men in the King movement. We see, as we know, there's a lot of confusion as to what manhood is nowadays. That's an understatement to say there's a lot of confusion. So we teach biblical manhood. You need a standard. It's important to have a standard. What am I aspiring to do? What am I aspiring to be? We all need standards to live by and shoot for. And so we use a biblical standard of manhood. So we teach our men to try their best to live up to the biblical standard of manhood. You are a family man. You want to provide for your family. You want to raise your children, be there for your children, follow certain principles in life. That's what manhood is about. We think manhood is synonymous with Christ-likeness, because we say Jesus Christ was the ultimate man. So we try to follow his example, and that's led in the Bible or put in the Bible. So that's what we teach our men. As far as my daughters, and they're 23, they're twin girls, they're 23. Man, raising them, it was important for us to, as we talked about, like, to develop obviously we wanted them to grow up and believe in God and love God and live for God. So in that regard, we presented God as like, he's the ultimate, but it's just a part of our lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Like Sunday, even though we go to church on Sunday was not a special day of the week. Like, oh, this is our God day, or this is our God time. No, God is Monday through Sunday. Like, he was a part of our life and everything, music, just our conversation. So I wanted them to understand that following God was a lifestyle in a relationship, as opposed to a religion. So that's one thing, spiritually speaking. And we had family devotionals and Bible studies and prayer and all that stuff. As far as race, we definitely wanted them to grow up with a healthy racial esteem too. So the books we read, when they were children, we read a lot of books to them that had African-American characters and Black history. In our house, we have my wife is really, she's the brainchild behind this, because her mom's house was like this, but I love it. But our house is full of African art, African-American art, photos, so you grow up with a healthy self-esteem, not only individually, but also about your race. We celebrated Kwanzaa, and we would talk to them about the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, and we did it biblically, but we would, talk to them about that. I taught them about African people or Black people in the Bible, and presented them, told them in the pages of scripture who was African American, things like that. And I tell you what, even with doing all of that, in America, you are inundated. It's a majority white country, and we know the historic racism in the country. So you still are inundated with images, whether it's television, magazines, whatever, that promote whiteness as the norm or the ultimate. And so even with all that we did, my daughters still, there were times, like, we bought them Black dolls, but there came a point where they wanted some white dolls. And we were like, nah, you Black, you should want Black, And what happened, so we taught them all of this. And then in high school, they went to a private school. And so in high school, they went to a conference for African-American students that went to private schools. And they dealt with a lot of these racial issues. And so when they came home from that conference, they both said it was life-changing, right? And that was the first time they were like juniors in high school. That was the first time we had a conversation about race where they really understood what I was talking about. And it was a back and forth. It wasn't just daddy teaching them about race and what you might encounter and this and that. They were coming back and understanding, and this, and so it's a challenge for I've seen it with my brothers and the way they raise their kids too. It's because the general education they're getting in school isn't really teaching a lot of this African American history and stuff like that.
Right.
And it's hard to supplement your education for your kids because they're learning, the primary stuff is what they're getting in school. And so, but even with all that, it was a challenge. But, as they've grown up, they've come to understand it. They appreciate what we did for them. And they are in a great place spiritually and culturally, and so it's benefits. So I would say to parents, that it's important to do that. But while you do it, while you teach your kids Black history and all of that stuff, I was conscious. I was like, I do not want them growing up feeling like victims. And there's a fine line you have to walk because obviously we have been victimized in this country. So, and a lot of Black history is overcoming, being discriminated against. So I wanted to teach it in a way where it wasn't like they would feel like victims or like I can't achieve as much as my white classmates or my Asian classmates. And we were able to do that. And I think part of that is also teaching African history and Black biblical history, where you have these Blacks who weren't slaves and weren't having to overcome discrimination. They just did great things, so that's very important because I didn't grow up knowing a lot of Black history, but I grew up being very proud to be Black. And because my father was very pro-Black, and I grew up with that, but I didn't know a lot of Black history or anything like that. But I never felt I can't be as smart as my white classmate. Right. And I went to my brother and I were the only Black kids in our school when I was in Syracuse in 7th and 8th grade. And I was the valedictorian of my class, as the only Black student. So I wanted them to feel like, man, there's no obstacles. Don't feel like, you're a victim. And thankfully, we were able to do that. They both went on to great colleges and did well in school and all that.
We had Kelly Oubre Sr. on, who's Kelly Oubre Jr.'s father. And we also, spoke with Terry Cummings, who's an ordained minister. And the message is, I was like, everything you're saying is very powerful. And I'm so glad that you're talking about it because Kelly Oubre Sr. talked about how, he was a single father, but he did not let that deter him to how he was going to raise his kid. And look where he is now. And even Terry Cummings, being at the time in Chicago, he's in Atlanta now, but he talked about mentoring the young youth and telling them, you guys aren't victims. This is the path that you need to take if you want to be successful. I think it's gentlemen like you in the community that needs to be, like I said, applauded more of, because there are men out there that are having organizations. There are men that are telling the young kids, especially the young Black kids, you're not a victim. Right. Don't let TV, don't let everything else tell you you're a victim. It starts at home, if you do things the right way, you can be successful.
Absolutely. And a friend of mine said this, Boyce Watkins, victimization might be a path on your journey or might be a stop on your journey, but it's not a destination. People have been victimized. I mean, individuals, groups of people, there's no denying that, but it's not a destination. It's not your identity. Like, okay, you've been victimized. We acknowledge it. But now how are we going to move past that? How are we going to move from victim to victor? Because that's really what you are. And so, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, man. And we can't lose track of that message.